Says we're live.
All right. Welcome to episode 12, I think, of the Everyday Dog Show, where I talk about dog stuff related to training or other things and so forth. So I want to always remind you to hashtag live or hashtag replay if you're watching this in live or at a later time. Just helps with the algorithm a little bit so people see this instead of just you. So today I have a guest again who are second time on the Everyday Dog Show, Paddy from Fido Felix Foods, who's got some great raw food products. But we're going to talk about various things today. And to begin with, Paddy and I were just in a bit of a discussion, a little bit about food and, you know, kind of what happens sometimes with some people and their dogs. So I'm wondering if, Paddy, you would elaborate on what that question was.
Well, the question is, I'm not sure how to phrase it. It's about leadership. Dogs require leadership, I think. I have this conversation with my customers all the time, just like kids. You don't let your kids tell you what to do, and you shouldn't be letting the dog tell you what to do. So I was just asking what your take was on, you know, you set down a healthy meal in front of Fido, and he says, no, I don't want that. And then what happens from there? And people tend to give up their leadership.
Sure. So there's a lot of layers to this. So I'm going to go off on some tangents. Feel free to interrupt me if you have a question, just like time me or something, because I might go a little long. But the first thing I want to mention is there's always the biggest thing in the back of my mind is if there's an underlying medical issue. So we need to, you know, make sure there's nothing going on, because I have had cases where dogs would not eat their food and it was a high quality diet, and it was more based on they were physically unwell inside. They would guard their food from the other dogs, but they're like, I can't eat it. I don't want no one to touch it. So stay away. And people are like, the dog won't eat it. And I'm like, okay, well, just make sure. I'm always suggesting people get in touch with their vet, because the dog might have an underlying medical condition, which the dog that I was talking about did. And it was like he had a whole bunch of like inflammation around his spine and was physically in not a good situation. So he didn't have an appetite.
Yeah, I always interject with customers and say, okay, are they like, is everything else normal? Are they drinking? Are they playing?
Right.
Is their behavior normal? That's the first thing I ask too.
For sure. So then if like that's ruled out because maybe they don't have zero other symptoms and they're frolicking like a happy-go-lucky puppy all over the place, but then they look at the food and they're like, no, but then they'll eat like any other thing that's not their supper, then I'm like, well, maybe this is an issue of, you know, potentially catering to the dog too much, that somewhere along the way they may have just learned, like, you know what, if I just hold out, you'll make it better. So like with that, leadership is a lot more of a complicated matter than people sometimes understand. And basically what I try to help people consider is that it's really about who's prompting who. I don't say a lot about alpha and dominance because I have a negative association with the words, that I think people feel like they have to do so through force.
Inappropriate behavior. Sorry about that.
It's okay. So I'm like, sorry. I'm like, leadership is what I will say versus dominance, because I think people feel like they need to get there through force, which is not true. Just let her up and so we could see her.
Okay. Now we've got two of them. One of them's wearing one of those.
Like looking at dogs instead of me sometimes, so it's all good. Like, oh, it's a puppy, cute. You need my love, mama.
Oh yeah, she's got it. She's done with us now. Anyway,
novelty is done.
Yeah, that was short.
So like, to kind of come back around, I'm just trying to have people consider that leadership is really about who's prompting who. And what I mean by prompting, I'm like, who's initiating behavior from the other person or entity for that matter. So for example, if you consider that dogs learn by trial and error, and my dog is prompting me, nudging me, licking me, pawing me 5-10 times a day for affection. Then we add on, my dog brings me a toy 5-10 times a day and I play with the dog immediately. My dog scratches my back door, barks at my back door, whines by the back door, and I get up because I'm kind and considerate, and I open it, I let them out, and then they bark back and they come back in. And my dogs jump up and on, off and on the couch whenever they choose, or my bed. Or there can be other ones too, right? The prompts can continue. It could be like some dogs, I go to sessions and the dog whines by the cupboard. And I'm like, what's the dog doing? They're like, oh, he wants a treat. And they get up and give him a treat. I'm like, okay, it's just taking in information for me. But the thing is if the dog's prompting me this much 20, 30 times a day, and I ask it to sit 3 times before supper, my relevancy as a leader is low. And it's kind of the equivalent in terms of, if you think about children, if I have an 8-year-old son, if I let him do what he wants, when he wants, how he wants, and I let him do as much of it as he wants, and then I'm like, clean your room, bro, he's gonna have a fit. He would steamroll me like a freight train. And I'm a pretty consistent guy. And like he will push. So that's where I try to help people. It's just like unintentionally. And I don't even know if the dogs are like, I'm the boss. I just think sometimes it's conditioning. They're like, do the thing, human, do the thing, human. And then we give them instant gratification and we do it because we think we're being kind and considerate, but it's actually like sabotaging our relevancy of them listening when it matters. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Where this started for me was years ago, my first German Shepherd. He was she wasn't dominant, but she was just very calm and confident and kind of doing her own thing. And at about
Independent.
4 months, what was that?
Independent.
Yes. Yeah, very. And at about, I don't know, a few months after I started feeding her raw, she started telling me what she was going to eat. There's only certain items that were acceptable. And I didn't know any better at the time. I was pretty new to dogs. And I started to kind of, oh, okay, well, if you want that, I'll feed you that, but not that. And in speaking with a dog trainer friend of mine, she said to me, who's running that show? I said, Molly. And yeah, hence the battle began between Molly and I. And for 4 months, she ate about every 3rd or 4th day before she finally realized, if I don't eat what's put down, I'm not going to get offered something else. Like, she really means it. And for that situation and that dog, that was critical because she tested me on pretty much every level. So I don't know, at some point, if I'd have let it continue, I'd have probably been hiding in the bathroom with the door locked.
Well, and it just can be a slippery slope, right? Like where sometimes dogs will can learn to turn their nose up to what we provide them. And I'm always thinking, is this an issue physically, or is the dog just like, nah? And then they wait a day or two, or even an hour or two, and then we're like, okay, Fido, here's some chicken, and I'm going to put some broth in it and stir it around. And then it just becomes almost like where the dog will refuse to eat it unless you ante it up and make it tastier. Now, this isn't that often this happens, but with some clients to me, like, oh my gosh, my dog has gotten like just a terrible, like they won't eat it unless I've got cheese in there, and then I've got this and this, and this only worked for 2 weeks, and then they start putting their nose up to this, and then they go to the people have to change to like a new protein additional source to what the dog's already eating or something special. So that's where it can be tough to address that. And sometimes people are really concerned and they're like, my dog's going to starve. I don't want them to feel bad. I don't want them to like vomit and stuff. And I'm like, I get it. But at the same point, it's like, at some point we're going to have to like be like I would with my son, right? I'm going to be like, okay, here's supper. And he's like, I don't want to eat that because this happens. And I'm like, buddy, well, this is what we're going to have. He's like, well, can I have fruit and this and that and the other? I'm like, if you finish your supper, I guess you could have a little bit of fruit. Sure. But I'm like, this is what's being fed. I'm not going to make 2 or 3 meals, one for me, one for you, one for the dogs. And it's all different stuff. I'm like, so when we think about it from that standpoint, as we had discussed, before this call together, I mean, it makes a little more sense where it's like, well, would I cater to my 3 kids different meals, whatever they want to eat every night? I mean, some people might, but then you're going to get trapped and it's going to hinder you. It's going to keep you back. Yeah. So then like, what do? Well, you either like continue to cater or you're like, I'm going to have to take a hard stance. And if you've catered for a longer amount of time, the dog builds up a lot of resiliency to try to wait you out. And I don't know what they're thinking. Okay. But I'm kind of feeling like they're like, nah, I don't want that. I'll go hungry for a little bit. You'll make it better. And then they come back and see what happens. So it seems to me like it's a muscle they build up, the ability to have like longer bouts of not eating and waiting you out, and then the people provide the tastier meal potentially by adding a handful of things to try to get the dog to eat. But I guess
Or
like what's
in between meals, when humans have a hard time with this concept, in my
mm,
experience. They feel really bad. So then they start slipping them treats in between offering them that meal.
oh yeah,
It totally undermines what you're trying to achieve.
okay, exactly. And it's the same thing, right? Like it's like my son wants to eat junk food snacks in between meals, and I'm like, no, because then you're not going to eat your meal. But it's the same thing, right? But
Yeah.
sometimes people don't think about it that way. Like if I give my dog treats in between meals because I feel bad because they haven't eaten since breakfast, and they're like, okay, I'm good. I'll just skip the next meal and you give me some treats in between. Like, I don't know what they're thinking, but obviously they're figuring some stuff out of how to extract better treats. And dogs, in my experience, are very good trainers of people.
Yeah, well, they say dogs have the intelligence of like a toddler, So let's say a 3-year-old. Well, I mean, I know 3-year-olds can get their parents trained up in really short order. And I don't think they're thinking about it like you just said. It's
Mm,
more of a cause and effect sort of a deal. It's
yeah.
like, well, when I do this, this happens. So I'm going to do that more because I like when that happens, sort of thing.
Trial and error
Yeah, exactly.
for
Yeah.
sure.
And
So I
I
guess
think,
like, go ahead.
well, to people, Molly was a shepherd. And like I said, had I let that behavior continue with her temperament, we'd have been in trouble. Like she ended up being like just my heart dog, the best companion ever. I took her everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But if I hadn't nipped that behavior in the bud, I don't think we would have had that relationship. And I don't think we would have gotten the same joy of living with her that we did. So I think there's just a lot of long-term rewards there. I say to people that this is going to be harder on you than it is on the dog.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Well,
But the
especially if you
reward,
just think of like dogs in the north or like wild dogs that have just become stray and live on the land. I mean, their meals aren't necessarily going to be very consistent and they're going to take what they can get, but they'll
yeah,
survive and they'll still thrive. So there's this short term kind of feeling bad for the dog that it might go hungry for a meal. But then it's like, well, what's the long term impact of this? There's a lot more to lose over the long term if we continue to cater to the dog with these certain kinds of foods that are probably not nutrient dense or balanced in the way that the dog needs. I'm like, them skipping a meal or two is probably going to be totally fine. And even in some circles, I mean, it's suggested that, you do fasting every once in a while to kind of reset your body. And I'm no uh, nutritional expert, so I'm not saying do this or whatever, but it's going to be okay in my anecdotal experience. But by all means, consult your vet. But
yeah. Well, a lot of raw feeders fast their dogs 1 day a week. They just don't feed. It's nothing but fresh water because in a dog's natural state, their closest relative in the wild being the wolf, they don't eat every day.
yeah,
They'll kill something and then they gorge themselves because they're probably not going to eat for another 2 or 3 days. So I also stress that to people, like, your dog's going to be fine. In that 3 or 4 months of Molly eating every third or fourth day, she didn't lose any weight. There was no lowering of her energy. She was fine. Not happy with me, but fine.
yeah. But that's the thing too, is like if we deal with it the first couple times and just wait the dog out where maybe it's, a little bit of a difficult week for the dog and their meals, it can be gone like pretty fast in comparison to 3 or 4 months, right?
Yeah, for
Because I've
sure.
had clients reach out and be like, oh my God, I've been struggling with this for 2.5 years. And I'm like, it's going to take some time to get your dog to like be like, this doesn't work anymore. And they're like, I'm going to try harder. And you're like, okay. So
Yeah, for sure.
anyways, the for the more complicated cases, I'm not suggesting you do anything. Maybe get some professional support. But if your dog is like young and just starting to like be like, I don't want to eat this junk, and kind of sniff it and then turn its nose up and walk away and it's healthy, I'm like, okay, no worries. I'll just put it away. I'll give it to you back at supper time and see if you want to eat it then. And if they do the same thing, then I'm like, well, let's go to, 5-10 minutes of it being out. Let's go tomorrow morning and then take it from there without trying to fortify it with additional bits, because it's just you get caught.
Yeah.
So I
Okay.
want to talk a little less about me. um and I'm curious because we had you on last time, talk a little bit about raw feeding, and I'd like to kind of delve back into there a little bit more, on a more of a surface level. But on your website, which is
FidoandFelixFoods.com.
there is a learning center that you're building out. So why would you build out a learning center on your website?
Well, there'll be frequently asked questions because there are probably about a half a dozen questions that I answer every day, all day. So it would be helpful for people. There's going to be a feeding guide on there, some guidelines as to how much to feed your, puppy, adult, senior, that sort of thing. There'll be some links to some great resources that I refer people to on a regular basis, for all sorts of information, be it vaccines and nutritional information, all sorts of stuff.
Okay.
There'll be some myth busting because there are some real common myths out there. So I will list and address those. So yeah, as much as I can cram into that small space is what's going to be in there.
You can scroll forever. What do you mean?
Well, yeah, I guess so. I'm
No,
thinking
and
about starting a blog because you can
Okay.
only, well, like you, issues come up and you think, oh yeah, I should talk about that. So yeah, I'm thinking about
Yeah,
a blog.
it's a closed Facebook group is what you just start up.
I was going to talk to you about that.
Anyhow, that aside, okay, so Learning Center is a good resource. So is it up and running, or do you have a date that it's going to be prepared?
I
Deployed?
apologize to everybody. I've been dragging my feet on this, but yeah, the deadline is June the 12th. That resource center is going to be up and live and running for June the 12th.
Okay, so for anyone interested in learning a bit more about Paddy and what she does, you can go over to her website, and especially in about 2 weeks, she'll have her learning center all set up. So if you're curious to learn more about raw feeding and some frequently asked questions, go over there, hit it up. Or if you don't want to wait and you want to reach out to Paddy directly, do that now. No worries. You don't have to wait. But so is there anything else you want to mention about the Learning Center or related to that?
I think we pretty much covered off the learning center, but I will touch on this. I'm potentially almost 100% adding a new adult dog to my household. And I
Okay.
have 2 existing shepherds. And I'm just a little nervous about this. So I wonder, well, when I added Pi, he was a puppy. It's easy to bring a puppy into your house. It's a little bit different with an adult dog, and everybody's got their space and their entrenched, stuff. So I'm thinking about feeding time. What am I going to do at feeding time? Am I going to be feeding the other dogs first? Like when I feed my dogs, they each have to be in a downstay, and then I release Pi, and then I release Liesel, because I find it easy to train around food because I'm lazy.
Sure.
So am I going to be feeding that adult dog after I feed those 2? And what about bones? I give them raw meaty bones. Pi and Liesel are pretty good together. Generally, Liesel eats hers and Pi's too, but I know that can be a trigger for fights.
Sure.
And their toy bin in the living room. So just all of that I'm wondering about.
Sure. So basically, you just want to sneak some advice out of me instead of talk about you, hey?
Yes.
It's all good. I'm just teasing, but yeah, a great question. Integrating a dog, how feeding schedules, toys, bones, those kinds of things, because it's definitely a point of issues that commonly come up. The biggest thing, which is curious to me, because people tend to sometimes think who eats first is in charge, which I don't really find there to be that much relevancy. So I'm not because this is my opinion, and not everyone's going to agree, and I don't really care. But it's the dogs are equal to me. They're like kids. 9-on-1, kid A is not in charge of kid B. I'm the one who's going to run the show. You guys are equal. You guys respect each other's boundaries and don't steal stuff from each other. Similar to I would do with children. Now, obviously, there's a little bit difference with children if I got a 17-year-old and a 9-year-old, but nevertheless. So when it comes to feeding time, I just feed everyone at the same time. But I will separate them by anywhere from 10 to 15 feet. So with you specifically, I might just have one dog out and then the new dog And then, you know, depending on the dog's trainability or where it's at already, I might just have it like in a crate or tethered somewhere near where I'm feeding.
Mhm.
Because my trained dog will stay back and eat its food, for example. So essentially I get the food prepared, and this is what I do. I'll just tell you what my routine is. Like, there's always two dogs here, sometimes three when my girlfriend's over. And it's like when we start preparing food, everyone's out of the kitchen. They come in the kitchen. What do you got going on there? I'm like, go. I heard them out. Go lay down. Stay. In any event, then I will start to call in one at a time of who comes in. Now, if you don't want your dogs to come in your kitchen and bug you, feed them outside of the kitchen. This is a very extra special tip. I realized 2 years ago that my dog was being super annoying, continuing to come in the kitchen when I'd prepare his food, even though I'd kick him out 10 out of 10 times because I
Mhm.
fed him in the kitchen after.
Oh,
So
yeah.
he's like, I got to try 17 times to get in the kitchen. And then finally you'll give me the food. But I'm like, no, you never, I tell you to come in. But I started feeding him outside of the kitchen and he'd lay down on the mat outside of the kitchen. I'm like, what the, that was it? And I did it for 6 years. I'd kick him out of the kitchen and he'd come back in. I'm like, what is wrong with you? Clearly it was me.
Well, you just made a point because I feed the dogs in the kitchen. And yeah, then I wonder why I'm tripping over dogs when I'm trying to cook and worried about somebody getting hurt.
Boom. So I'm
Yep.
like, get out of the kitchen. And then I bring the food outside to where I want them to eat it, which
Yep.
is actually typically the same spot that I want them to stay when I'm preparing it.
Okay.
So then they're like, oh, wait, if I come into the kitchen, you kick me out. But if I stay on my mat, this is where my food comes. This is where I should stay. Because the least path of least resistance is the mat, the food comes to it. Okay, got it. Instead of, for me, it was I got to come into the kitchen 7 times and then eventually I get my food, is what the dog was thinking, I suspect. So that's what part 1. Okay. Part 2 is if I would like to 15 feet or so between the dogs, just so when they're eating, if one of them finishes early and they want to go investigate the other one when it's eating, I'm like, don't you dare. And I'll get in between, I'll herd them away, go. And I'll get in between them. I don't pull them. I like to use a lot more body block, which is just my personal space bubble. And I
Yep.
move towards them and they back up. Because I don't know why, but if you move through a dog and they move out of your personal space, kind of like you and I, there
Yep.
tends to be like, oh, you don't like that? It's very clear for whatever reason. So I heard a lot. Plus, it's a lot easier. I just walk towards them and they walk out of the way. I'm like, all right,
Yep.
you can
Yep.
touch them. Now, that's that piece of it. Okay. So that kind of brings me into the next piece of like, okay, now they're done eating and they're walking by each other. Is it okay if they lick each other's bowls? I'm like, I don't care as long as no one's fighting over it. And this is the distinction. So if dog A, let's say Liesel,
Yep.
is eating and then Pie is done and she walks over and she starts creeping close to him and kind of like nudging her way closer, I'm like, hey, Pie, go, give us some space. And I get her away,
Yep.
regardless of what he's doing. If he was growling, even, I wouldn't even tell him to stop, because with what people don't understand is possession's 9/10 of the law. So if the dog's over top of it, it's theirs.
Right.
When it comes to other dogs, it's a little
Yeah.
different, but that's a side note.
Okay.
So then I'm like, no, like, though I'm not actually interrupting the dog who's growling. I'm interrupting the one who's using poor etiquette and is trying to go and take something. Like, I don't know if you've ever been like at a nice restaurant or something, and then someone like you might know a little bit walks by, or even a friend, and they grab like a nice big piece of whatever you're eating. You're like, what the hell? Like, could you ask? Like, it's going to be annoying, right? But that's that, but maybe plus 100%.
Yep.
So then I'm
Makes
like,
sense.
no, you can't do that. Stop it. But this also is similar with bones and toys. So once again, like what I try to encourage people to understand is, you have 3 dogs. Well, I don't care if you bought a toy for dog A and dog B has this toy and dog C. It's whoever's in their possession, it's their toy then until they walk away from it.
Okay.
Because then it's less confusing. So because it's not okay if dog A gets growly and grumbly because there's a rope toy that's across the room that's theirs when dog B walks by. I'm like, it's not yours unless it's in your possession, because this is the distinction. Is think with kids. I have a single son. My neighbor boy comes over and my son's playing iPad, let's pretend. And the
Mhm.
neighbor child comes over and he starts playing with some of my son's other toys. And my son's like, stop it. You're not allowed to play with that stuff. Why? You're not playing with it right now.
Mhm.
So it's a scarcity thing that I have to teach my son to have more emotional intelligence around, where it's like, no, it's fine, buddy. He's not going to steal the stuff and he's not going to take it. Just chill.
Right.
So then the same thing is too, where it's easier if you think about kids. So if the neighbor boy comes over and he sits down on the far side of the couch and my son walks over to him and he's like, hey buddy, you want to play this game with me on the iPad? He brings it to him. Totally kosher.
Mhm.
But if the neighbor boy comes and grabs the game from my son's hands and tries to pull it away, not okay, neighbor boy.
Okay.
So it's the same with toys, right? So if Pi has a rope tug toy and she walks it over to Liesel, she's trying to
Mhm.
be like, hey, come and take it. Let's play. Unless she's like trying to bait him to like kick his butt, then I'm like giving her heck because I'm like, you invited him to play and then you kicked his butt for taking you up on the offer. That's not okay.
Right.
But does these distinctions of kind of when to do what make sense?
They do. Yep, makes perfect sense. I'm still nervous about the introduction of a new dog into their space.
Well, that's where, like, to begin with, I don't have any resources around until they've developed a relationship.
Right.
The biggest thing is too, this is a big, you guys are getting a lot of extra tidbits here because this is some high level stuff here. But when I have clients, like there's that, I don't know if you ever heard, but like you got to introduce new dogs on neutral territory. Have you heard that before?
Yes.
I don't believe it because you
Oh,
know what I have to do?
what?
I don't have the liberty to choose a neutral territory when I'm working with clients. I can't go to their house for a private session with their dog who has issues with other dogs and be like, hey, bring me to somewhere neutral that we can introduce them. They're like, I don't know. Me neither.
Makes
So
sense.
I have to work with what I have, right? And it's more about how you introduce. Now, obviously, if I go into their yard and that dog's barking and frantic and spitting and snarling through the fence and I walk in, hell yeah, it's going to be bad. But that's not how I would do it. I would be like, hey, get your dog on a leash, go on the far end of your yard. I'm going to come in with my dog. We're going to take 3 to 10 minutes till your dog visibly calms down. I did this yesterday, like
Mhm.
10 times to where it is right now. And then once it's chill, then I'm like, now we can let them meet. Because then that, oh, this is my area. And the barrier issues are now gone and dissipated. And what people don't understand is that time will just actually de-escalate them because they can't be frantic if the situation stays the same for any duration of time. So they start to go like this and they go down and they start to whine. And like, what am I supposed to do? And then they calm down. And I'm like, okay, now we introduce them.
Okay.
So that's essentially what you could do with your dogs in your yard is I would do outside stuff first, one at a
Mhm.
time though. Because I want them to develop a relationship with the dog before there's two of them so they don't gang up. So I'm like,
Right.
one at a time. We're going to start with the easy one or whatever, the hard one, doesn't matter. But let's say it's Pie. I go
Mhm.
outside. I have Pie maybe tethered to something if you're by yourself, or Pie is being held on a leash by someone. And then
Mhm.
dog two comes in, new one, and we stand across from each other and we wait 3 to 10 minutes till they both chill out. Then I drop the leashes and I let them go and engage. And if they're doing good and sniffing, I'm like, okay, everybody stop. Let's have a cool down. You guys are doing good. Awesome. Let's not wait till you fight. So when we take them apart, we wait 30 seconds to a minute. They start to de escalate and they kind of catch their breath back. And then you let them go again.
Okay.
And then if it's like end on a high, that went really good. Awesome. Okay, cool. Now let's throw that dog in, bring the other dog out. And then you do those other ones one on one. And then the three of them together introducing, because after they have a relationship, going into the house won't be as big of a deal if
Yeah.
you've put away all the things that they are potentially possessive of.
Okay.
And that's a separate challenge I would deal with later, but you got to stack it or else you're just going to be overwhelmed and it's going to not necessarily go well.
Yeah. Don't want that.
How's that?
Very helpful.
All right. Well, I think with that, we'll probably wrap it up for today, unless there was anything else you wanted to add.
No, I
Okay.
can't think of anything, Derek. I
Yeah,
just
no
think
worries.
all been great information.
For sure. So feel free to share it up, anyone, with whomever you want. I will get a YouTube link of this too, but don't forget to comment on here, tag some friends if you want, hashtag live, hashtag replay if you want to see some more content. And, you can also comment with some ideas if there's anything you want me to go over or chat with someone to chat with on the Everyday Dog. But otherwise, I bid you adieu, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful day. Happy
Thanks.
weekend. There's sun.
Thanks, Derek.
You're welcome. See you.
Bye.